We got a problem.
So we have everyone's favourite smear merchant, Victoria Derbyshire, speaking to an organiser of the pathetic baby Trump balloon and a UK Trump supporter. Now, before we get started, we need to say something right off the bat. The BBC have a smaller version of the aforementioned ridiculous baby blimp in the studio, which is of course extremely disrespectful. I know everyone says they are a biased broadcasting corporation, but they don't really need to rub it in everyone's faces. So as you all know, this is coming about because the Queen has asked Trump to come over on a state visit. But of course these radical leftist nutters can't accept that and have to come out on TV spouting all kinds of nonsense in an attempt to smear Trump. Which of course Victoria Derbyshire is always happy to jump on. Look at her failed attempt to smear the UKIP MEP candidate and YouTuber Sargon of Akkad. We all know her level of journalism. So let's take a look at what was said earlier.
Thank you very much, Carrie. So as President Trump landed in the UK, he decided to tweet this about the Mayor of London. Sadiq Khan has done a terrible job as Mayor of London, has been foolishly nasty to the visiting President of the United States, by far the most important ally of the United Kingdom. He's a stone-cold loser who should focus on crime in London, not me. And he then went on to insult his height. Now, that all comes after Sadiq Khan criticised the president, describing him as a 20th century fascist. The Mayor of London has just described President Trump's latest tweet as childish insults. Mr. Trump arrived an hour ago and he is accompanied by his wife Melania. His children and their families will also be joining him for part of the three-day trip, which comes ahead of a visit to France to mark the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Protests, as you know, are planned across the UK while he's here. Tomorrow, an even bigger version of this giant inflatable mocking the US president is due to fly over London.
So there you see it. The impartial BBC have the Trump baby balloon in the studio. Like I said, just flaunting it now like they don't care. We are the left-wing propaganda machine and proud of it. Is what they're saying here, really. She plans to attack the president because he's tweet to the snivelling weasel Sadiq Khan, who is likely to go down as one of the most incompetent and useless mayors in the history of London. The tweet started because of Sadiq Khan's article he wrote yesterday about Trump, comparing him and his supporters, along with the Brexit Party and its followers, to the fascist movements of the 1930s and 40s. So naturally, Trump fires back. Let's continue with the clips and see what more they've got to say.
And that tweet just as he was landing at Stansted Airport. Obviously, he knows exactly what he's doing. What's the reaction so far to that?
Well, you saw what Sadiq Khan had to say himself. I mean, these two men have a lot of history, if you remember. They've been at one another on a number of issues, particularly on questions of knife crime and things like that, where Donald Trump tried to paint a pretty bleak picture of what was going on in London in terms of that issue. So he's had Sadiq Khan in his sights for some time, but I think probably that business of talking about 20th century fascism got under the president's skin. He expects a certain degree of respect for the office, respect for himself, and he's completely prepared to go after people, as you can see in that tweet, even to the extent of suggesting that Mr. Khan isn't very tall.
Now, the reporter says that Trump is trying to paint a bad picture of the situation involving knife crime in London. Dipshit, do you live under a rock? The knife crime epidemic in London is out of control. There is no need to paint a bad picture of it. It can't get much worse than it currently is. He then says Trump expects respect for the office and for himself. Like that is some stretch to ask for. It's basic human decency. Well, it was until the radical left made it okay to bound around calling people racist and fascist because you don't like them or can't beat their ideas in a debate.
Now to Anna Vickerstaff, who is one of the organisers behind the Trump baby. You can see a mini version of the blimp here in our studio this morning. And Daniel McElhinney, who is a spokesperson for Trump UK. Now, that is a group of people in Britain who support the president. Right, let's talk about this tweet first of all. I mean, this outburst. What do you make of that, Daniel?
Well, our mayor has been goading the president for quite some time.
So it's Sadiq Khan's fault?
Of course it's fucking Sadiq Khan's fault. If you put out of course it's Sadiq Khan's fault. If you put out a piece in a newspaper saying that Trump is like a 1930s or 1940s fascist, expect a response. You're slandering someone, or you're putting claims out there in no, how would you call it? You're calling the leader of a country a fascist in a newspaper without providing a shred of evidence to support these claims. It's ridiculous. Like, no wonder Trump responded. No wonder Trump attacked him, because he is useless. Everything Trump said in his tweet is correct. Like, you even see in the tweet where he quotes the nasty part because of the media's false reporting yesterday of his quote of his discussion with a reporter about Prince Harry's wife, Meghan Markle, where they said that he called her nasty and he didn't. He said he was unaware that she had used nasty words about him. So, yeah, that shows the media's level of reporting. I believe the BBC even reported on this as well yesterday.
Well, I think we can't, underestimate the fact that he is the number one trading partner, the number one political, economic and social ally with this country. He's the elected leader. Calling him a fascist is disgraceful.
Right.
It's disgraceful to the American people, and it's disgraceful to the office of president.
And so responding about his height and calling him
it's
a
unhelpful.
sad loser is
It's unhelpful. It's unhelpful. But I think what else would Sadiq Khan expect? He knows the way that Trump deals with this kind of stuff, and Sadiq Khan was trying to elicit a reaction to get this kind of conversation started.
Which is true, is it not?
I mean, I think what this tweet shows is exactly what we're saying with the baby, which is that Trump doesn't communicate in the way that someone in his position should. He doesn't respond well to reason or to science or to facts, and he communicates in insults. He's a big bully,
right.
And the big baby reflects
but Sadiq
that.
Khan
And this
was also doing the insults game, wasn't he?
I absolutely think that's true. I think Sadiq Khan has every right to call Donald Trump a 20th century fascist. Like, fascism does not appear out of nowhere, and recently Donald Trump has been propping up and facilitating the far-right agenda by working with people like Bolsonaro, and that shouldn't be belittled. He might not be a fascist himself, but he's definitely facilitating the far-right agenda, and Sadiq Khan has every right to call him out for that.
Okay, you fucking half-wit. So, how in the fuck is Sadiq Khan not abusing Trump and attacking Trump when you consider Trump's tweet to be attacking him to be unacceptable? Now you're saying it's perfectly fine for Khan to attack Trump because you don't like him. That's essentially what you're saying. Because none of what you said is based around evidence. You say that Trump ignores evidence. You ignore evidence. You didn't listen to a single piece. You haven't listed a single piece of evidence, brought no evidence with you. You're just going off spouting crap that you hear in the media, you hear on Twitter, and just talking absolute nonsense. It's ridiculous. Like, if you think that Sadiq Khan has every right to call Donald Trump a fascist, then Trump has every right to call him what he called him in his tweet, where he said that he is a loser, he's useless, he needs to focus on a knife crime, which are all true statements of facts. You know what I mean? These are not anything out there. He is a loser. He has completely bungled the knife crime epidemic. He's a useless mayor. He's not exactly a tall man, so even calling him short is correct. He's just an angry little man going off on one.
Well, obviously, I don't think he's facilitating the far-right agenda. I think he is providing what the American people want. They voted for him. I don't think that the vast majority of the American populace are racists or fascists or neo-Nazis or any of the things that our politicians have described his voters as. I trust the American people to elect the person who's best for them.
I think this absolutely isn't a protest against American people. This is a protest in solidarity with American people affected by Trump's politics. This is a protest against the fact that we're rolling out the red carpet for a man who, yesterday we heard, is potentially going to privatise the NHS and the way that's going to impact people in the UK. This is a protest against a man who regularly denies climate change, which is a death sentence for people in the global south. This is a protest against a man who regularly spouts misogyny, who's taken away the reproductive rights of women and non-binary people in the US. It's completely unacceptable, and we're not protesting American people. We're standing with them to say, we're here for you, we're going to protest with you, and we're working on the ground to defeat these fascist politics.
So she claims the protests are not against the American people, while calling the president they elected a fascist, which means you are calling the people who voted for him a fascist, so you are talking about the American people. She's doing all this while loving off her buzzwords misogyny, fascist, racist, sexist. Now, she complains about the red carpet treatment, which is what happens when the Queen invites a head of state over to the UK. I expect the Queen knows we need a good trade deal with the US, so she's invited Trump over to sweeten up the deal. You leftist idiots are too dumb to realise that, too busy trying to stop Brexit than using your actual brain for a few seconds to think about what's good for the country. Now, she also spouts the complete nonsense alluding to Trump banning abortion, which is completely contradictory to what he said last week when he came out against the new abortion laws in some of the US states. Do some research, you fucking half-wit.
There's a lot to pick up with that. The point you're making about privatising the NHS is if post-Brexit the UK tries to get a free trade deal with the US, potentially the NHS service and providers might have to be opened up to the American market. How do you respond?
Before he responds, I want to respond. Here goes the BBC and Victoria Derbyshire, the fucking contemptible bitch, promoting the Remainer idea that any free trade deal is going to include NHS. Now, let me tell you something. We are never going to give up the NHS. There is never going to be a government that is going to be able to swing it that they give away our NHS. Never in a million years. People love the NHS. They will not give it up. They will not be able to privatise it. There will be uproar. End of subject. It doesn't matter if you want to or not. They just wouldn't allow it. Because too many people hold it in such high regard, and the fact that it's a social thing. It's not a private enterprise.
Well, Trump has not made a policy out of that yet, so I think it would be foolish of any of us to sort of speculate on potentials that will happen after
But yesterday the US ambassador
Brexit.
said that it was on the table, so it's not
Sure,
foolish
it's
to
on the
talk about it.
table, and when it,
There's a
you
long
know,
way
when
to
it's
go.
when it's presented, then we can sort of discuss it in depth when we actually know what's being discussed. But until that point, it's just speculation.
You see, and he has the correct answer. It's on the table because we haven't even started negotiating. Everything's on the table. Selling Victoria's ass on the street is still on the table in a free trade deal. Because nothing has been agreed, nothing has even been contemplated yet. This woman is just determined and determined and determined to put down Trump and make out like he's trying to buy our NHS off us and we're going to have to pay American prices for healthcare and things like that. This woman is a complete joke. Talk about Project Fear for the Remain.
Well, if
We
it's
don't
like-
have to accept it, of
We
course.
don't have to accept it, and that's
Right.
we're not accepting that as a proposal because we're out in the streets. Last time Trump was here, there were 250,000 people on the streets of
Yeah.
London. We don't know how many people are going to be here tomorrow, but we do know that beyond those thousands of people in the streets, there are thousands more who are regularly organising to resist the kind of thing that Trump represents. And if he is our biggest ally, we need to make sure that we're holding him to account and having the kind of relationship that we want. Just because Brexit's happening doesn't mean we have to accept a trade deal that's going to be disastrous for our healthcare. Like that,
course not.
we're here to say that we deserve better than that.
Right, so first off, the NHS and buying it is not in any proposal. There's been no proposals made, as I've already said. And as for what you said about if he's our biggest ally, he is our biggest ally. But the things that you want to hold him to account for, you need to actually produce some evidence for. Since you never do that, how can we hold him to account, as it's just an allegation? Welcome to innocent until proven guilty. Just because you say something doesn't mean it's true.
Nat tweets this: we should welcome him. He is coming as the anniversary of the D-Day landings where many Americans also died. I mean, do you accept that? I mean, part of this visit is actually a really important commemoration of all those who lost their lives, including US service personnel, British service personnel, Canadians and so on. We worked together. It was a very, very important alliance.
Absolutely, and we're not saying that Trump shouldn't be here. We're criticising the rolling out of the red carpet of this level of state visit. And as I said before, if we actually remember what the D-Day celebrations are about, they're a celebration of a memorial in for victory in a fight against fascism. And currently, the way Trump is enacting his policies is creeping back towards a far-right agenda, which we really need to be aware of.
Right, there is nothing about Trump's policies that are fascist or even remotely fascist. It's just your imagination. And yes, this visit is about the D-Day landings. It's about America and Britain and all the other countries that came together to fight fascism and the Nazis. And yet you're sitting here complaining that our Queen has invited another head of state over using the standard procedures that they would use in the situation of a head of state coming to meet our head of state, which is not Theresa May, it is the Queen. She invited him, not Theresa May. The Queen. Remember that. You have a problem, tell the Queen it, see if she cares. She won't, because she knows that a relationship with Trump is much more important than pandering to your...
I think comparing Trump to 1930s and 40s Nazism is not only offensive to the victims of 1940s Nazism, but offensive to the people that voted for him from all kinds of backgrounds, and dangerous. I mean, it sets a precedent where we call everyone who we disagree with the Nazis. You've got people who don't know... They're stuck in this bizarre situation where they go, well, do I like this person? You know, they called Trump a Nazi, so do I like this other politician
I'd just
they
like to
call a
clarify,
Nazi?
I'm not calling Trump a Nazi. That's
Right.
not what I'm saying.
But do you, because he is the president of the United States and therefore a country that is one of our greatest allies, if not our greatest ally, we have to accept everything he says and does?
Well, no, of course not. Of course not. But we have to show respect for his office. I don't think...
In the way that
frankly,
he's shown respect for the Mayor of London's office?
Well, the
That
Mayor of
kind of
London,
respect.
the Mayor of London and him have been going at each other for quite a while. I don't think it's very fair to lay all the blame at Trump's door.
The Mayor of London started this issue yesterday with his article, as I've said multiple times now in multiple videos. He started the attack on Trump. He called Trump a fascist, like from the 1930s or 40s. Trump never said nothing to him. I expect Sadiq Khan was a bit butthurt because, contrary to what the media and the Labour Party will have you believe, Sadiq Khan was not invited to the banquet this evening. Everywhere has been printing out and reporting that Sadiq Khan was boycotting it when actually he was never invited. There's articles from last year, I believe it was, where it says that he's not invited. So the chances are he wouldn't have been invited to this one either. So, yeah, he's not boycotted it the same as Jeremy Corbyn. He's probably not boycotted it. He was probably never invited because I expect Trump doesn't like them. Doesn't like their politics and the way they carry themselves. Trump's not stupid.
However, we are entering into unprecedented political and economic turmoil at the moment. And we need trade deals. We need to start making friends. We can't start cutting off our nose to spite our face because we don't like the fact that he called our mayor a loser.
But we also need a trade deal that works for everyone. And if Trump does not represent all American people.
No, but he is their democratically elected president.
And do you think that, sorry to interrupt, Vic, do you think that protests and a giant blimp will put him off coming up with a decent free trade deal for us?
She says Trump does not represent all American people, yet he is their democratic leader, as the guy says. Like, is this woman completely fucking retarded? The fuck is wrong with her? He is the democratically elected leader of the United States, hence why he's called the president. They don't just make someone who a couple of people voted for the president because he's Trump. You know what I mean? It don't work like that. Your derangement might think it does, but it really doesn't. And as for what Victoria said about the balloon, do I think Trump will care about it? No, I don't. He will just think the people who are there doing it are pretty pathetic, because it is pathetic. It's a stupid balloon. I mean, it looks quite funny, don't get me wrong. If I was Trump, I'd find it hilarious, as I've said before, because it is quite funny. And if people have took the time to make a balloon, you know you're doing the right thing, because you're pissing off these people. And they're worth pissing off. Let's be serious.
I don't think it will, because I think he's got enough respect for this country to look beyond that. You know, there'll be people on the streets and there'll be people at home who are supporting him. You know, there's only, as you said, I think it was 250,000 last time. You know, we're much larger than that. We're much larger than that as a nation.
And when people point out, look, in March last year, we had the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia was in the UK. In May, we had the Turkish President, Erdogan.
President Xi, just after he declared himself
Absolutely.
president for
In
life.
July, the Emir of Qatar.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
We'll welcome everybody.
Right, the people that protested against Trump didn't protest well, most of them, I'm sure there were some, but didn't protest. There weren't these large-scale protests against those people who are genuinely abusing human rights.
That's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, we did not see the size of protests that we're expecting this week for President Xi and others.
It's totally unfair to say there aren't protests. There are. The scale of the protests against Trump are in direct correlation to the position of power that he holds and the platform that he
President
has.
of China.
No, the reason why you all do Trump is because he's a bigger Paul. This gets you more publicity. It's got absolutely nothing to do with actually Trump himself. It's to do with the publicity pools. Like the leaders of China and things like that, they might have done some reprehensible shit, but at the end of the day, the UK government and the powers that be know that we need to do deals with them, like Qatar, like Saudi Arabia, because they got the oil, and we need the oil. Like, this woman needs to be able to take train, car, bus to wherever she's going so that she can get to these interviews and promote her ideology. So she needs this oil. But she doesn't understand that sometimes you've got to deal with some reprehensible people to make the deals to secure your country's future. This woman thinks we live in the ideological dreamland that she believes we do, which is not the case. We live in the real world, where sometimes you've got to deal with pretty bad people to get what you need. Like, Jesus Christ, woman. And as for what Victoria said about the balloon, do I think Trump will care about it? No, I don't. He will just think the people who are there doing it are pretty pathetic, because it is pathetic. It's a stupid balloon. I mean, it looks quite funny, don't get me wrong. If I was Trump, I'd find it hilarious, as I've said before, because it is quite funny. And if people have took the time to make a balloon, you know you're doing the right thing, because you're pissing off these people. And they're worth pissing off. Let's be serious.
China, very powerful.
But Trump is in the spotlight. He's seen as our biggest ally, and the policies that he's currently enacting they're sexist, they're tearing apart migrant families at the US border, they're racist politics, and they're going to impact in the UK when we negotiate this trade deal. So we need to be holding him to account, and because of that very direct relationship, that's why we're seeing protests at this scale. It's just common sense.
Okay.
Just to say...
Briefly, thank
just
you.
briefly to pick up on one of the things you said about tearing families apart at the border. The ICE policy that you're talking about was enacted by Obama and was ended by Trump. Trump is the one that ended that policy because he heard what the American people had to say.
I'm not here to defend
scaling it
Obama.
back.
I'm here to criticise what Trump is doing with migrants in the US now, which is very serious and dangerous, and we need to be
reduction of
holding him to account.
67% of migrant arrests since Trump has become president because of increased security at the border.
Okay.
So here we go again with the Mexico border ICE procedure, whatever it is that America has for dealing with illegal immigrants, claiming that Trump's doing this, Trump's doing that, and then this guy shuts her down with Obama enacted that, Trump ended it. But of course this woman doesn't know that, because she didn't bother to do no research before she come on. She had some nonsense to spout and she wanted to spout it. But anyway, that's going to be the end of the video. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comment section below, and remember to leave a like and share the video, as it helps a lot. And I'll catch you all in the next video.
Man's gonna kill this shit. You'll need SWAT and medics too. Off with the contract credits due. Punchline king, I'm ahead of you. A&E's where you're heading to. Whip is green, but the lights are blue. Bars are shit, take the mic from you. Heating up cheese, I don't like fondue.